Hey everybody, today we are looking at Ezekiel chapters 19 to 21. And in this section, there's a number of strange prophecies and laments and parables again. And this section starts off with a lament or a parable, a story about the Israelites and their mother. Producing these offspring, these strong, ferocious offspring that have everything going for them, and yet they're handed over to other nations. And this is a metaphor, an allegory of the sort of most recent kings of Judah, who again have everything going for them, who are strong, and yet they are handed over to these other nations. And this is kind of a story, it matches the history of what happened with the last kings that get set into place before the Babylonian exile happens. And it's just a sadness, it's a lament, it's a cry to say, look how far we have fallen. And then this section ends with another parable of Ezekiel getting a sword out, and he's supposed to carve a way for the king of Babylon to choose which way he's going to go and in which direction destruction is going to come. And ends with this prophecy against the people of Judah living in Jerusalem, and then the Ammonites as well. And then in the center, we have this long kind of rambling kind of look back over history, over three successive generations of the Israelites. So those who had just come out of Egypt, those who are just about to enter the promised land, and then those who have been settled and established in the promised land. And we have this sort of this six-fold repeated pattern in each of these three generations that get talked about. And so the six-fold story goes like this. One, God reveals himself to his people, the Israelites, and so that they know that he indeed is God. He is the Lord. So God reveals himself. Point number two, God challenges the people to worship him and love him and obey him and him alone. So there's this call, I am God, and I want you to follow me alone. And this is a challenge that every time the people accept. But then the third point, Israel rebels. They don't listen. They don't uphold their end of the covenant, of the deal. They worship other gods. They reject God, and they go their own way, which leads to point number four, that God threatens to bring his wrath upon the people. He wants to get their attention. He called them back to himself, said, you made these promises to me, but you're now going far from me, and if you keep going this way, well then your sin is going to catch up with you. So there's this threat, this warning for them to turn back. And then five, the fifth point is that the people don't turn back. They keep going, they keep rebelling, and we have a small picture of God's wrath. And so in the first generation, he lets them wander around in the desert. In the second generation, they go into the promised land, but it's not easy. Instead of flowing with milk and honey, there's bad guys and there's difficulties. And in the third generation, it's that for a limited time, they'll be handed over into exile. So there's this limited wrath, but God says that he intervenes for the sake of his own name, of his own reputation, that instead of just allowing total sin, the consequences of your sin to totally overwhelm you and completely wipe you out, I'm going to hold back all those terrible things that are coming your way because of your choices. I'm going to hold them back for the sake of my name, of preserving my reputation, that I'm a God who keeps his promises and upholds who I am and my reputation, even though you haven't held up your end of the deal. And then the sixth one is a act of limited judgment, that God does allow some aspect of this sin to catch up with them. So they feel this alienation or exile, or they feel the consequences of their sin. Not in totality, because obviously a remnant remains. God's people still remain God's people. but God allows the consequences of their sin to have some kind of limited action in their life. So those are the 6 points. But then it kind of ends with this section, which I think wraps up the whole chapter, which God says, obviously, you guys can't get your act together. I've given you time and time and time again, and this is the whole point, that I've limited the consequences of your sin. I've forgiven you and given you a number of chances. I've given you laws and guidelines to help you live your best life, and you still reject me. And you can't help save yourself. It's impossible. So in the very last section of chapter 20, God says, well, I'm going to act then. Because you can't act to get yourself right, I'm going to act. Not to destroy you, but to fulfill my purposes for you originally. That is, to establish a purified people who know and love and follow after God. And God says, I'm going to do this through a new exodus, a new rescuing you, bringing you out of the slavery and sin that you've grown accustomed to, and we're going to start all over again. I'm going to reveal myself, and I'm going to make you my new people. It's a promise that looks forward to, obviously, what we know as the arrival of Jesus, someone who did what we as humans, what the Israelites could not do, to live God's laws perfectly, to love him obediently, and because of him, we can have this new life. And so this passage points us into the direction and hope of Jesus. So that's our devotion for today. Hope you have enjoyed reading Ezekiel, and we'll meet you back here again next time. See ya later. Bye.